Rafik and Anila had lived in their small town for many years. They were an elderly couple who enjoyed a calm and peaceful life. Their home was simple and warm. They liked their daily routines, such as watering plants in the morning and reading books in the afternoon. But there was one activity they loved more than anything. They enjoyed going to storage unit auctions. It was their shared hobby, and it brought excitement into their lives. Every time they went to an auction, it felt like explorers searching for forgotten treasures. One bright morning, they decided to visit a large storage auction that was being held at the edge of town. The weather was pleasant, and the sky was clear. Rafik drove their small truck, while Anila looked out the window with a gentle smile. She liked watching the trees pass by and hearing the soft sound of the wind. When they reached the auction site, they saw many people gathered around. Some looked serious as if they were professionals. Others looked excited like they were hoping to find something valuable. Rafik and Rasila walked slowly through the rows of storage units. Each unit had its door open so bidders could see the inside before making a decision. Some units were filled with broken furniture. Some had old tools and dusty boxes, and some had nothing special at all. The couple took their time and looked at each one. They never hurried because they believed that the right unit would speak to them in its own way. As they walked further, Anila stopped in front of a unit that looked different from the rest. The door was half open, and the sunlight fell across the items inside. There was an old wooden table, a few chairs, and a tall metal cabinet. At first glance, it looked like nothing special, but something about it caught Anila's attention. She moved closer and peered inside. Dust had settled on everything, but she felt a strange sense of calm around the unit. Rafik noticed her interest and came to stand beside her. He looked inside as well and nodded. It was not a unit that most people would choose. Many bidders nearby walked past it without a second glance. They were busy planning to bid on the flashier units that looked more promising. But Rafik and Anila had a different way of thinking. They believed that sometimes the most simple-looking things held the deepest stories. The auction announcer called out for bids. People raised their hands quickly and shouted numbers. The air was filled with excitement. When the announcer reached the unit that Anila had been looking at, there was silence. No one stepped forward. The announcer waited for a moment, then asked again if anyone wanted to place a bid. Still, no one responded. Anila gently touched Rafik's arm. He understood what she meant without her saying anything. He raised his hand and placed a small bid. The announcer looked around to see if anyone else would join, but nobody did. He nodded and announced that the unit now belonged to Rafik and Anila. Anila felt a warm thrill in her heart. She always trusted her instincts, and she felt that this unit had chosen them. Rafik smiled at her and squeezed her hand before they started walking inside. The air inside the unit smelled old, like books kept on a shelf for many years. The floor had a thin layer of dust that rose slightly with each step they took. The wooden furniture looked worn but strong. Rafik tapped the table with his knuckles, and the sound echoed softly. It reminded him of times long gone when things were built to last. Anila walked around the chairs and touched them gently. She loved old objects because she believed they carried memories. Even if she did not know the people who used them, she felt connected to their past. The thought made her smile. As they moved deeper inside the unit, Rafik noticed something behind a stack of boxes. It was a small safe made of metal. It had a dark color and a simple lock on the front. The safe was not very large, but it looked heavy. Rafik bent down and tried to lift it. It did not move much. He called Anila over and pointed at it. Anila looked at the safe with wide eyes. She had never expected to find something like that. Her mind filled with questions. Why was the safe hidden behind boxes? Who owned it? Why did they leave it behind? She looked at Rafik and saw the same curiosity in his eyes. They decided not to open the safe there. It was better to take it home where they could examine it properly. They started moving the items out of the unit and loading them into their truck. The chairs went first, then the boxes, then the table. The metal cabinet was harder to move, but Rafik managed with slow and steady effort. Anila held the safe carefully as Rafik carried it to the truck. She felt a strange excitement every time she looked at it. When they finished loading everything, they stood near the truck and took a small break. The sun was warm but not harsh. Anila looked at the safe and felt like it held a story that had been waiting for many years. She did not know what they would find inside, but she felt that their peaceful life was about to become much more interesting. As they drove home, the road felt different to them. Rafik kept glancing at the back of the truck through the mirror. The safe sat quietly among the furniture, but it seemed to hold a presence of its own. Anila kept thinking about the person who had once owned it. She imagined an old man carefully placing things inside it, or a family keeping their memories safe. Their house was a short drive away. When they reached home, Rafik parked the truck near the porch. They began to unload the items one by one. They placed the table in the garage, then the chairs, then the boxes. When it was time to bring the safe inside, Rafik lifted it gently while Anila supported it from the side. They carried it into the living room and placed it on the table. The safe looked simple, but mysterious. The lock was old, but still strong. Anila brushed off some dust from it. Rafik sat down and stared at it for a moment. They both felt the same thought. This safe had something important inside. It was not just an object. It was a piece of someone's life. Rafik fetched a small toolkit from the drawer. He sat on a stool near the safe and studied the lock. Anila sat beside him, watching quietly. Rafik began to work slowly. He did not want to damage the safe. He tried turning the lock gently, then used a small tool to test the mechanism. The lock did not open easily. It felt stubborn, as if it wanted to keep its secrets hidden. After several minutes, Rafik paused. He wiped his forehead and sighed softly. Anila suggested they rest for a while, but Rafik wanted to try a little more. He adjusted his hand position and tried again. This time, something shifted in the lock. It gave a small click. Rafik stopped for a second. Then he tried again and heard another click. Anila leaned forward. Her heart beat a little faster. Rafik turned the lock one last time, and the safe opened slightly. He slowly pulled the door open. They both stared inside, expecting something ordinary. But what they saw made their breath catch in their throat. Inside the safe were several envelopes tied neatly with a ribbon. There was also a small wooden box placed beside them. Everything looked well kept, as if someone had placed them carefully long ago. The envelopes were yellow with age, but still intact. The wooden box was carved with simple patterns and looked handmade. Anila picked up one envelope and held it gently. She felt like she was holding a piece of history. She wondered who wrote the letters. Rafik picked up the wooden box and felt its weight. He wondered what could be inside it. In that moment, both of them felt the same thing. This discovery was not ordinary. It was the beginning of something meaningful. Their journey with the storage unit had only started. The safe had opened a door to a story that was waiting to be told. The peaceful life they knew was about to become filled with mystery and purpose. Rafik and Anila sat quietly in their living room with the safe open in front of them. The envelopes and the small wooden box looked simple, but to them they felt like treasures waiting to share their story. The living room was warm and peaceful, yet the air felt filled with curiosity. Anila held the first envelope gently, while Rafik placed the wooden box on the table with care. Neither of them wanted to rush. They wanted to understand everything slowly and respectfully. Anila opened the envelope with delicate fingers. Inside was a letter written in neat handwriting. The ink had faded slightly because of age, but the words were still clear. Anila began to read it softly. The letter talked about a man named Afzal who once lived in the town many years ago. He wrote about his daily life, his dreams, and his love for his wife, Farah. The tone of the letter was warm and full of emotion. Anila felt her eyes soften as she read each line because she could sense the kindness in his words. Rafik listened carefully, resting his hand on the table. He felt moved by the letter, even though he had not read it himself. After Anila finished reading, they sat quietly for a moment. They both felt the same thought. These letters were not just papers. They were pieces of a life that someone had treasured deeply. Anila placed the first letter aside and picked up another envelope. Inside were more letters. Some described moments of joy, others spoke of challenges. But every letter reflected a strong bond between Afzal and his wife. Enila noticed that the letters were addressed to Farah, but it seemed like Afzal had written them for himself as well. To express his feelings and preserve his memories, she smiled softly as she read about small moments like cooking together or sitting outside in the evening. These were simple things, but they showed a deep love. Rafiq picked up the wooden box and examined it carefully. The box had a smooth surface and was carved with small lines that formed simple patterns. He ran his finger along the carvings and felt that someone had made it with great care. The box had a small latch at the front. Rafiq opened it slowly. Inside was a gold bracelet. The bracelet was simple but elegant. It had a smooth curve and a warm shine, even though it was old. Next to the bracelet lay a folded piece of paper. Rafiq took it out gently and unfolded it. The message inside was short but meaningful. It said that the bracelet belonged to Farah and was meant to stay safe until it could be given to someone who would value it. Rafiq read the message aloud. Enila listened and felt a soft ache in her heart. She could imagine Afzal placing the bracelet in the box with love and care. They placed the bracelet back in the box and looked at the envelopes again. The safe had held these items tightly for many years. They wondered why it had been left behind in the storage unit. Rafiq leaned back in his chair and thought deeply. He believed that something unexpected must have happened in Afzal's life that caused the safe to be forgotten. Enila suggested they try to understand more about the person behind these letters. She believed that knowing the story would help them decide what to do with the items. They both agreed that it would not feel right to keep them without learning about the life connected to them. The next morning they woke up early and prepared for a visit to the town records office. Enila wore a light shawl, while Rafiq carried a small folder where he had kept a few copies of the letters for reference. They walked outside to their truck and drove slowly toward the center of town. The sky was bright and birds were flying peacefully. But inside the truck, both of them felt a sense of purpose. When they reached the records office, a kind clerk welcomed them. The office was filled with old books, files, and drawers that held years of information about the town's past. Rafiq explained that they wanted to know about a man named Afzal who had lived in the town a long time ago. The clerk nodded and guided them to a section where older records were kept. They searched through documents and newspapers. After some time, he found a file that mentioned a man named Afzal. The file described him as a craftsman known for his honesty and his skill in making wooden items. The file also mentioned his wife, Farah, who was known for her gentle nature. The clerk explained that the couple had lived in the town many decades ago and were respected by many people. But the file also told a sad part of the story. After Farah passed away, Afzal became quiet and withdrew from society. He closed his workshop and sold many of his belongings. He lived a simple and lonely life for a few years. Then one day he left town and never returned. No one knew what had happened to him afterward. The records ended there. Enila held the file for a moment and felt a deep sense of compassion. She imagined the pain Afzal must have felt after losing his wife. Rafiq touched her hand gently and nodded. They both felt that the items inside the safe were part of the love that Svel wanted to preserve even after life became difficult for him. After leaving the records office, they walked through the older part of town. They hoped that someone might still remember stories about Afzal. Many houses in that area had been there for decades, and some residents had lived there since childhood. Rafiq and Enila went from door to door, asking politely if anyone knew anything about Afzal. Most people did not remember much. Some said they had heard the name before but could not recall details. But after some time, they met an elderly man who ran a small shop. When Rafiq mentioned Afzal's name, the man paused and thought for a moment. Then he smiled softly. He said his father once spoke about a kind craftsman who helped their family many years ago. He said Afzal was known for fixing things for people without asking for much in return. The shopkeeper also mentioned that he had heard his father say something about Afzal leaving town to find a distant relative in another region. No one knew if he had found the relative or not. After that, no news ever reached the town. Enila thanked the shopkeeper warmly. Every new detail added another small piece to the story. She felt that Afzal had been a gentleman who loved his wife deeply and tried to keep their memories safe even when loneliness surrounded him. The thought made her feel emotional. When they returned home, the afternoon sun was shining through their windows. The safe still sat on the table, open and quiet. The envelopes and the wooden box looked even more meaningful now that they knew the story behind them. Anila placed her hand on the table and sat down, thinking deeply. She felt that these items deserved to be with someone who could honor their history. Rafik joined her at the table. He suggested that they try to find any living relatives of Afzal, even if the relation was distant. It might bring comfort to someone knowing that the memories of their ancestor had been found and protected. Anila agreed. It felt like the right thing to do. During the next few days, they continued their search. They talked to more people and visited places that might hold information. Some told them small details. Others shared stories they had heard from older family members. Every piece added depth to the life of Afzal and Farah. Rafik and Anila felt grateful for every clue they found. They believed that they had been chosen to discover the safe for a reason. The items inside held a message of love, patience, and remembrance. They felt responsible for honoring that message. One evening, as they sat on their porch, Anila looked at the sky. She talked about how life sometimes brings unexpected paths. A simple visit to a storage auction had turned into a journey that touched their hearts. Rafik nodded and said that sometimes life gives people a chance to help preserve memories that might otherwise fade away. They both agreed that they must continue their search until they were sure they had done everything possible. The safe had opened not only a door to the past, but also a door to a purpose they had not known they needed. Their peaceful life now carried a new meaning. The mystery of the safe was no longer just about objects. It was about honoring a story of love that deserved to be remembered. After spending several days reviewing the letters and examining the bracelet, Rafik and Anila felt a strong desire to know more about Afzal and Farah. The letters told them about a man who had loved deeply and a life filled with quiet kindness. But the mystery of what had happened to them after Farah passed away remained. The elderly couple wanted to discover the rest of the story. They believed that the memories inside the safe deserved to be honored properly. The next morning, Rafik and Anila decided to begin their search by visiting older residents in the town. They walked slowly through narrow streets lined with houses that had stood for many years. The walls were faded with time, and the wooden doors creaked as they passed. They stopped at a small bakery first, where an elderly woman named Selma sold fresh bread every morning. Her eyes were bright and her hands worked quickly, shaping dough with care. Rafik greeted her politely and asked if she had ever known a man named Afzal. Selma paused and smiled gently. Afzal, she said. Yes, I remember him. He was a kind man. He and his wife, Farah, lived on the street behind the marketplace. I was very young at that time, but my father told me stories about them. They were always helping people quietly. Afzal made furniture and small items for many families, sometimes without asking for payment. Anila listened carefully. She thanked Salma for the information and asked if she knew what happened to the couple after Farah passed away. Salma shook her head slowly. I do not know the full story, she said. After Farah passed, Afzal became very quiet. He sold his workshop and most of his things. He did not stay in town much. Some say he went to find a relative far away, but I never knew if he returned. That is all I know. Although the information was limited, it gave Rafik and Anila hope. They knew they were moving in the right direction. They continued walking through the streets and spoke to more people, mostly elderly residents who had lived in the town for many years. Most did not remember Afzal personally, but a few had stories passed down from their parents. Each small story added another piece to the puzzle. One man, who ran a small furniture shop, recalled seeing Afzal working in his workshop as a young boy. He said Afzal was a man who treated everyone fairly and never complained. The shopkeeper told them that Afzal had once repaired a chair for his family when no one else would. Afzal did not need thanks, the man said. He helped because it was the right thing to do. Rafik and Anila listened quietly, feeling admiration for the man they were learning about later that afternoon. They visited the town library to look for more records. The library was quiet and smelled of old paper. Rows of books and archived newspapers covered the walls. Anila walked along the shelves, feeling as if she could almost touch the past. They asked the librarian for any information about Afzal and Farah. After some searching, she found a few newspaper clippings from decades ago. One article mentioned Afzal winning a small award for craftsmanship. Another article spoke about a charity event that Farah had helped organize. The articles were short, but they painted a picture of a kind couple who had touched many lives in quiet ways with each discovery. Rafiq and Anila felt more connected to the story. They understood that Afzal and Farah had lived ordinary lives, but their lives were meaningful because of their kindness, patience, and love for each other. The letters in the safe were evidence of their deep bond and their wish to leave something meaningful behind. Rafiq held the wooden box with the bracelet and felt the weight of responsibility. He wanted to honor Afzal's memory the right way. A few days later, Anila suggested they try to find living relatives of Afzal. Even distant relatives might. "I want to know about the letters and bracelet," Rafiq agreed. They began by asking residents if they knew anyone connected to Afzal's family. Many people did not know, but one man remembered a distant cousin named Aslam, who lived in a nearby neighborhood. He told them that Aslam might be related through a branch of Afzal's family that had moved to another town years ago. Rafiq and Anila decided to visit Aslam. They found his home, on a quiet street lined with flowering trees. Aslam was a middle-aged man who greeted them politely. When they explained their visit, his expression softened. He listened carefully as Rafiq showed him the letters and the wooden box with the bracelet. Aslam's eyes widened slightly. He said he had heard stories from his grandparents about Afzal and Farah. His grandparents spoke highly of Afzal as a man who loved his wife deeply and helped people. Quietly, Aslam examined the bracelet and read some of the letters. He smiled softly and said that it felt like a connection to his family's past. He explained that he had always heard about an ancestor who cherished love and memories above everything else. Seeing the items in front of him gave him a sense of pride and gratitude. He thanked Rafiq and Anila for bringing them to him. However, Aslam said something unexpected. He believed that the couple had found the safe for a reason. He thought that Rafiq and Anila were meant to share the story with the town, rather than keeping it in private. The thought resonated with both Rafiq and Anila. They realized that they could honor Afzal and Farah by letting others know about their life and love. The letters and bracelet deserved to be seen and appreciated, not hidden away. Rafiq suggested they speak to the director of the town museum. The museum often displayed stories about local history, and this story could inspire many people. Anila agreed. Together, they visited the museum and met the director, a kind woman named Nadia. She listened to their story with great interest. When Rafiq and Anila showed her the letters and the bracelet, Nadia's eyes lit up. She explained that many visitors loved to learn about local history and personal stories. This display would give people a chance to connect with the past and understand the importance of kindness and love, Nadia suggested. Creating a small exhibit that told Afzal and Farah's story. She promised to make the letters visible in glass frames and to place the bracelet carefully on a soft cushion. Visitors could read the letters and understand the life of the couple. Rafiq and Anila felt a sense of relief and happiness. They had found a way to preserve the memory of Afzal and Farah in a meaningful and respectful way. After visiting the museum, Rafiq and Anila returned home. They sat in the living room, looking at the safe and the remaining letters. They reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple storage unit auction. What had seemed like a small adventure had turned into a journey that connected them to a story of love, kindness, and memory. They felt grateful for the chance to be part of something so meaningful. Over the next few days, they prepared the letters and the bracelet for the museum exhibit. They cleaned the wooden box carefully and tied the letters with a soft ribbon. Anila wrote a brief note explaining the significance of the items. They wanted visitors to understand that these were more than objects. They were memories, stories, and evidence of a life lived with love and care. While preparing, Rafiq and Anila spoke often about the life of Rafiq and Farah. They imagined the couple sitting together in their home decades ago, sharing quiet moments and finding happiness in simple things. The letters reflected ordinary life, but they carried extraordinary emotion. Rafiq and Anila felt that in discovering the safe, They had been given a gift. They had been entrusted with preserving the story of a family that might otherwise have been forgotten. One evening, Neela said to Rafik, "I feel like Afzal and Farah are smiling at us. They trusted us to take care of their story." Rafik nodded. "Yes," he replied, "and we will make sure people remember them for years to come." They sat together quietly, holding the wooden box between them. The bracelet shone softly in the evening light. The letters were stacked neatly beside it. Everything felt peaceful yet important. The days that followed were filled with preparation for the museum. They met with Nadia to finalize the display. Together, they arranged the letters in the frames, placed the bracelet carefully, and created a short description to explain the story. Nadia suggested adding a photograph of the town from Afzal and Farah's time. They agreed. The final display captured the life, love, and values of the couple perfectly. Finally, the day came when the exhibit was ready for visitors. Rafik and Anila visited the museum and watched quietly as people read the letters. Children asked questions about the couple, and adults read each line with attention. The bracelet and wooden box drew gentle admiration. Rafik and Anila felt a sense of fulfillment. They knew they had preserved something meaningful. They had given life to memories that could inspire people for many years. Sitting together in the museum, Rafik and Anila reflected on their journey. It had begun with curiosity at a storage auction. They had discovered a safe, explored its contents, traced the past, and honored a life that mattered. They realized that sometimes the simplest choices lead to the most extraordinary experiences. They had found purpose, connection, and a story worth sharing. Their hearts were full, and they knew that Afzal and Farah's legacy would continue through the museum and in the hearts of all who learned their story. Rafik and Anila felt a quiet sense of pride as they left the museum after their first visit to see the display of Afzal and Farah's letters and bracelet. The exhibit was still simple, but it was full of meaning. Visitors had come to look at it and had been touched by the story of the couple's love, kindness, and memories. For Rafik and Anila, this was more than just helping the museum. It felt like they were connecting to something larger than themselves. They realized that what they had discovered in the storage unit was a treasure in more ways than one. Back at home, the couple sat together in their living room and reflected on everything that had happened so far. They spoke about the letters, the bracelet, and the information they had gathered about Afzal and Farah. Anila carefully took out another envelope from the safe. She smiled softly as she said, "These letters tell us so much about their life. Yet there is still a part of the story that is missing. I want to make sure we do everything we can to honor them." Rafik nodded. He felt the same way. "I agree," he said. "Even though we have the museum exhibit, I feel like we should try to find someone connected to Afzal, if there is a living relative. It would be good for them to know that these memories are safe and respected." Anila agreed immediately. They decided to begin searching for family connections again. This time, they focused on distant relatives who might still live nearby or in a neighboring town. They made a list of people to visit, wrote letters, and called a few names they had heard during their earlier search. Each day, they spent several hours speaking to people, sharing the story of Afzal and Farah, and asking for any information that could lead them to a relative. Some people did not know anything, but others remembered distant cousins or family friends. Every new piece of information was a clue that helped them move forward. Their determination never faltered. They believed that Afzal and Farah's story deserved to reach someone who could appreciate it fully. One afternoon, a young man named Aslam responded to their inquiry. He explained that he might be related to Afzal through a distant branch of the family that had moved away many years ago. He invited Rafik and Anila to his home. They were careful but excited as they traveled to his house, wondering what they would find and what he would say about the letters and bracelet. When they arrived, Aslam welcomed them warmly. He had a gentle and calm presence. Rafik explained the purpose of their visit and showed him the wooden box containing the bracelet as well as a few of the letters. Aslam's eyes widened with interest and curiosity. He listened intently as Rafik described how they had discovered the safe in a storage unit and how they had traced the history of Afzal and Farah. He felt deeply moved by the story. Aslam took a few minutes to examine the letters carefully. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the papers. He read the words aloud softly, and it was clear that he felt a connection to the life they represented. He said that he had heard stories from his grandparents about Afzal and Farah, but seeing the letters and the bracelet in person made the stories come alive. It was as if the past was speaking directly to him. Rafik and Anila watched as Aslam held the bracelet gently. It was a simple piece of jewelry, yet it carried the weight of decades of love and memories. Aslam smiled softly and said, "It is beautiful. I feel like they trusted you to keep these things safe until someone could honor them properly. I am grateful that you found the safe and brought it here." His words made Rafik and Anila feel a sense of warmth and fulfillment. They knew that their decision to search for a relative had been the right one. However, Aslam also said something unexpected. He believed that Rafik and Anila were meant to share the story and not just keep it private. He thought that their discovery was a gift not only for his family but also for the town. He suggested that they continue working with the museum to create a permanent exhibit. This idea resonated deeply with Rafik and Anila. They realized that Afzal and Farah's life and love could inspire many people, not just their family. The next day, Rafik and Anila met with Nadia, the museum director, to discuss how to improve the exhibit. Nadia welcomed their ideas and suggested creating a small space that told the story of Afzal and Farah in a way that visitors could understand and feel connected to. She planned to include the letters, the bracelet, and a short narrative describing the couple's life, their love, and their kindness. Rafik and Anila worked closely with her to ensure that every detail honored the couple's memory. Over the next few weeks, they prepared the items for display. Anila carefully cleaned the wooden box, making sure not to damage it. She tied the letters with a soft ribbon to keep them neat and protected. Rafik polished the bracelet gently, restoring its shine without changing its character. Together, they created a presentation that reflected the respect, care, and admiration they felt for Afzal and Farah. Each step of preparation made them feel closer to the couple, whose life they had discovered. Meanwhile, Aslam visited them several times to learn more about the letters and the bracelet. He shared stories his grandparents had told him about Afzal and Farah. He described the couple as people who always thought of others and lived simply. Yet their love and actions were extraordinary. Rafik and Anila listened carefully, feeling that each story added another layer of meaning to the exhibit they were preparing. The connection between the past and present grew stronger with every conversation. One morning, Rafik suggested they create a small booklet for museum visitors. The booklet would summarize the story of Afzal and Farah, include a few excerpts from the letters, and explain the significance of the bracelet. Anila loved the idea. She began writing with care, making sure to use simple words so that anyone could read and understand the story. She wanted the exhibit to inspire people of all ages. Rafik helped by organizing photographs and historical information about the town, giving context to the story. When the booklet was complete, they reviewed it together. It contained a detailed yet simple account of Afzal and Farah's life. It explained their work, their love for each other, and their acts of kindness in the community. It described how Rafik and Anila had discovered the safe and how they had traced the past to honor the couple. Anila read the booklet aloud, and Rafik listened with a smile. They felt proud that their efforts had created something meaningful and lasting. The museum prepared the display with care. The letters were placed in glass frames, each one visible to visitors without risk of damage. The bracelet rested on a soft cushion, catching the light softly and shining gently. The wooden box held a central place, showing the care with which Afzal had preserved it. The booklet was available for visitors to read, allowing them to understand the story behind the items. Everything was arranged to honor the life and love of the couple who had lived so long ago. Finally, the day came when the exhibit was ready to be opened to the public. Rafik, Anila, and Aslam visited the museum early in the morning. They walked slowly through the exhibit, observing how the letters were displayed and how the bracelet caught the light. They felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The exhibit was simple, but full of meaning. Each detail reflected the love, care, and life of Afzal and Farah. When visitors arrived, Rafik and Anila watched quietly as people stopped to read the letters and look at the bracelet. Children asked questions about the couple, and adults read every word with attention. Some visitors smiled softly, while others nodded thoughtfully. The exhibit connected people to a story of life, love, and kindness that transcended time. Rafik and Anila felt joy in seeing others moved by the story they had helped preserve. Aslam stood beside them, holding the wooden box carefully. He spoke to visitors about his connection to Afzal and Farah. He explained that the letters and bracelet had been discovered in a storage unit by Rafik and Anila and had been preserved with care. His words gave the story a personal touch, making it even more meaningful for everyone who visited. The three of them watched as people connected with the life of a couple who had lived decades ago, realizing that ordinary lives could leave extraordinary legacies. At the end of the day, Rafik and Anila walked home together. They were tired, but happy. The journey had begun with curiosity and had grown into something far greater than they had imagined. They had discovered a safe, explored its contents, traced the past, and created a way for the story to inspire others. Their hearts were full, knowing that Afzal and Farah's legacy would continue through the museum and the memories of all who learned about them. Sitting together on their porch that evening, they reflected on the journey. Anila said softly, "It is amazing how a simple storage unit led us to something so important. We found love, history, and a way to make a difference." Rafik smiled and replied, "Yes. Life sometimes brings unexpected opportunities. We were in the right place at the right time, and we chose to honor the past." They sat quietly for a while, listening to the sounds of the town and feeling the satisfaction of a purpose fulfilled. The story of Afzal and Farah, once hidden in a small safe, had now found its place in the hearts of many. Rafik and Anila had helped turn forgotten memories into a meaningful experience for the town. They understood that treasures are not always gold or jewels. The morning sun shone gently through the windows of Rafik and Anila's living room. The couple sat together, sipping tea and reflecting on the journey that had begun weeks ago with a simple storage unit auction. The letters, bracelet, and wooden box that they had discovered had become more than objects. They had become a story that connected the past to the present. The couple felt proud knowing that their careful actions had preserved the memory of Afzal and Farah and shared it with others in the town. Over the past few weeks, the museum exhibit had become a place that drew many visitors. Families came together to read the letters. Children asked questions about the couple, and adults often paused quietly, touched by the story. Rafik and Anila had been invited to the museum several times to see how people interacted with the display. Each visit reminded them of the importance of their work and the impact a small discovery could have on many lives. One morning, they received a call from the museum director. Nadia, she sounded excited as she spoke. "Rafik, Anila, I have wonderful news. Many visitors have expressed how much the story of Afzal and Farah has inspired them. People are even asking if we can create a small program where children can learn about kindness, love, and history using the exhibit. Your discovery has grown beyond our expectations." Rafik and Anila exchanged a look of quiet happiness. They had never imagined that a simple storage unit could lead to something so meaningful. Later that day, Rafik and Anila decided to visit the museum themselves. They wanted to see the exhibit with fresh eyes, away from the crowds and noise. As they walked through the display, they observed how carefully the letters were framed, how the bracelet rested on the soft cushion, and how the wooden box stood as a symbol of a past life preserved. Anila read one of the letters aloud softly. Each word seemed to carry the warmth of Afzal's love and the gentleness of Farah's heart. Rafik listened, feeling the presence of the couple as if they were in the room with them. Afterward, they met Aslam, who had been following the development of the exhibit closely. He smiled warmly at them and said, "I cannot express how much this means to me. Seeing the letters and bracelet here, knowing that their story is being shared, fills me with pride. I feel that Afzal and Farah would be happy that their life is remembered in this way." Rafik and Anila nodded. They understood that their journey had been about more than preserving objects. It had been about honoring a life, a love, and a legacy. As the days went by, museum decided to include the story of Afzal and Farah in educational programs for children. Teachers brought students to the museum to learn about the couple's life, their acts of kindness, and the importance of preserving memories. Rafiq and Anila were invited to speak to the children, sharing their experience of discovering the safe and tracing the past. The children listened attentively, fascinated by the idea that a storage unit could hold a story waiting to be uncovered. Many asked questions about how they could help preserve memories in their own families. Rafiq and Neela answered each question patiently. They explained that every small action, every letter or photograph, every moment of kindness could become part of a story worth remembering. They encouraged the children to ask questions about the past and to value the lives of those who had come before them. Seeing the curiosity and engagement of the children filled their hearts with joy. They realized that the story of Afzal and Farah was now inspiring a new generation. In the evenings, the couple often sat together at home, reflecting on how much their lives had changed since discovering the storage unit. Their days were filled with small adventures, conversations about history, and the satisfaction of knowing that they had done something meaningful. Anila would sometimes hold the bracelet and smile, imagining Farah placing it carefully in the box long ago. Rafiq would pick up a letter and read it quietly, feeling the emotions of Afzal as if he were speaking directly to them. Their home had become a place where the past and present met, a bridge connecting memories across time. One afternoon, Aslam visited them with a gift. It was a small photo album containing images of Afzal and Farah from family collections. Some photos were of them as young adults, smiling and working together in their home. Others were of Afzal's workshop, filled with tools and furniture he had made. Aslam explained that his family had kept these images for decades but had never known how to preserve the story fully. Now, with Rafiq and Anila's help, the photos could be displayed alongside the letters and bracelet in the museum. Rafiq and Anila felt honored. They carefully examined each photograph, appreciating the details of clothing, the expressions on the faces, and the way the images reflected life many years ago. They knew that these photos would add another layer of connection for visitors. Helping people imagine Afzal and Farah's life more vividly, the couple began making plans with Nadia to include the photographs in the exhibit, ensuring that every part of the story was preserved with respect and care. Days turned into weeks, and the museum exhibit became more complete. Visitors continued to arrive, and word spread about the story of Afzal and Farah. People left notes expressing their admiration, gratitude, and inspiration. Some wrote about the lessons they learned from the couple's life, about the importance of kindness, patience, and remembering those who came before. Each note was carefully collected by Rafiq, Anila, and Nadia, adding a living record of the impact the story had on the community. One evening, Rafiq and Anila sat together on their porch, watching the sun set over the small town. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the air was filled with the gentle sounds of nature. Anila spoke softly. "It is amazing how a simple choice, a storage unit, and curiosity have led us here. We have helped preserve a life, a love, and a story that will continue to inspire people." Rafiq nodded. "Yes," he said. "It reminds us that even ordinary lives can leave extraordinary legacies if we take the time to notice and care." As the days passed, the couple continued to visit the museum and participate in educational programs. They spoke to visitors, shared stories, and guided children through the exhibit. They felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment that brought warmth to their hearts. Every day, they were reminded that life sometimes presents opportunities to make a lasting difference, and that the choices we make can preserve memories, inspire others, and honor the lives of those who came before us. Rafiq and Anila also shared their experience with friends and neighbors. People listened with interest as the couple described the discovery of the safe, the letters, and the bracelet. They spoke about tracing the past, finding Islam, and creating the museum exhibit. Their story became a source of inspiration, showing that curiosity, kindness, and persistence could reveal treasures far greater than material wealth. Many in the town began to reflect on their own family histories, searching for stories and memories that could be preserved for future generations, even in the quiet moments at home. Rafik and Anila felt connected to Afzal and Farah. The letters and bracelet remained in the museum, but the memories and emotions they carried were alive in the couple's hearts. Each letter they had read, each story they had uncovered, had become part of their own lives. They felt a bond that transcended time, a connection built on love, care, and respect for the lives of others. The museum decided to hold a small ceremony to celebrate the completion of the Afzal and Farah exhibit. The event was attended by community members, children, families, and educators. Rafik and Anila were invited to speak. They shared the story of the storage unit, the discovery of the safe, and their journey tracing the past. They spoke about the importance of preserving memories, valuing love, and recognizing acts of kindness. Their words were heartfelt, and the audience listened in silence, inspired by the story and the couple's dedication. At the end of the ceremony, Aslam spoke briefly. He expressed his gratitude for Rafik and Anila's efforts and shared how meaningful it was to see the life of Afzal and Farah preserved in such a respectful and impactful way. The audience applauded, and many left with smiles and thoughtful expressions. The couple felt a sense of closure and joy, knowing that the legacy of Afzal and Farah would continue to touch the lives of countless people for years to come. Returning home that evening, Rafik and Anila sat together quietly. They held hands and reflected on their journey. From the moment they had discovered the storage unit, their lives had changed. They had uncovered a story of love, traced a past that could have been forgotten, and preserved a legacy that inspired a whole community. They realized that sometimes the greatest treasures in life are not gold, jewels, or material wealth, but the memories, stories, and love that connect people across generations. As night fell, the couple looked out at the stars. The world felt vast and full of possibilities. They understood that the story of Afzal and Farah, once hidden in a small safe, would live on in the museum, in the hearts of visitors, and in the lessons it taught about kindness, love, and the importance of remembering the past. Rafik and Anila felt grateful for the journey, the connections they had made, the difference they had helped create. The discovery of the abandoned storage unit had become a journey of purpose,